We're going to call to order the work session for Tuesday, April 4th. Ms. Wood?
Here?
Here.
Here.
Here. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Board of Education maintains a webpage on lewispalmer.org through which members of the public can find live streaming information and the meeting records, as well as presentations and resources which will be reviewed and discussed during this meeting. Agenda item B is that we wanted to review the timeline and the process to fill Director District 1 vacancy. So I'm just going to review the timeline as we have been running it. On March 31st, we had a review of all applications just to verify the boundaries and that all materials had been handed in. We do have 2 applicants who are being interviewed this morning. A notice announcing the public meeting to conduct the interviews was put out at least 24 hours in advance of these interviews. This morning, we will be interviewing our 2 applicants. On the morning of April 7th, we are tentatively planning to have a short meeting to make an announcement of the appointee. I just want to check in with everybody that on the morning of Friday, April 7th, you are available. I know Mr. Clausen, you said you are.
I am.
And Ms. Upchurch? Mr. Schwartz, do you know if you're available on Friday morning?
I have a meeting at 8:30 I have to attend. Are we planning on doing this before?
Yeah, we were planning on 7 or 7:30, depending on people's availability.
The answer is yes.
Okay. Do any of you have a preference about 7 or 7:30?
Earlier the better for me.
Okay. So is that workable for you, Ms. Upchurch? And okay. So Dr. Summers, 7 a.m. on Friday, April 7th.
And just to clarify, that would be a virtual.
It is a virtual via Zoom, yes. And we expect it to be about 15, 20 minutes, not much longer than that.
With that singular action, correct?
Singular action, special meeting.
You're confirming that, and we'll make sure that we get that posted out later.
Okay. Okay. And then that allows us on April 17th at our regular board meeting to swear in the new member of the board, and then also in that same meeting do the board organization. So that is our timeline. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay, so I think at this point we are going to go ahead with Director District 1 interviews. And our first interviewee is Mr. Bill McDonald, who's here with us. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Mr. McDonald. So we anticipate this interview to be about 30 to 45 minutes or so. And Mr. Mark Belcher has a list of questions that he's going to be asking. We want you to feel as much at ease as you can. So, but it allows us a chance to gain a little more information in addition to the application materials that you presented.
Sure.
And of course, we're looking for, best fit and what will work well for the school district. So, with that, Mr. Belcher, I'll let you take it away.
Appreciate that. I'm Mark Belcher, Director of Communication and Public Relations. Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald, for being here. As mentioned, we've got between 30 and 45 minutes, and I've got a list of 11 questions. So feel free to direct your answers directly to the board. And your first question is, please start by sharing why you're interested in serving on the Board of Education.
Okay. First of all, let me just say that I really appreciate this opportunity. I think this is a real personally, for me, it's an honor to even be considered for this board. And I say that because having been in this community for some 43 years, raising my child here, I'm very connected to the school. And so you ask why I'd be interested in doing this. I guess you could say my civic duty, civic pride. This school district has been one of the top performers since I've been here. I've also been kind of a follower of education in the country in general. And I think all of us can see, what some of the problems are. Lack of teachers, lack of curriculum. There just seems to be so much chaos, mostly brought on, I think, by politics. That said, I think my role here, should I be elected, would be just to continue to see that we uphold the standards and principles that have been established in this school district over the years by the people that have been employed here and appointed here. So that's my reason.
And I should note that our Board of Education may ask a follow-up or a clarification. So again, feel free to direct your answers straight to them. And your second question is, what top 3 attributes are essential for successful school board members? How have you demonstrated these attributes in prior experiences?
Okay. I come from a background that is mostly military and corporate. I would say most of my values and principles right now that shape my views have been through my professional career. I was mostly in sales management, sales training through the course of my career in orthopedic implants. So I've had a lot of background in teaching and instruction. I think the biggest thing I've learned as a sales executive was how to listen. I'm coming into this cold. I know nothing really about what's going on in the school district. So for me to, try and outline specific goals, objectives, I have some personal that I would like to contribute, but whether or not they're appropriate for this board, I don't know. I would say the 3 most important things is I want to see accountability. I come from an industry, a business, where performance was what mattered, accountability and transparency. Those 3 things, I think, are hard to achieve, but to be big. Performance, I'm a performance-based person. I believe in performance for teachers, for students, performance for parents. Accountability. I believe in if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I think you need to be results-oriented. I believe in equality. Equality, I believe in, not equity. So those are the basically 3 principles that I'd like to bring.
Excellent.
Integrity, transparency, performance, and of course, excellence, which you've already got here. You got the excellence part already. I just want to see that we maintain that or be a part of that process. Okay.
Excellent. From your
Pardon me, Mr. Schwartz?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question.
I don't mean to turn my back on you.
No,
that's fine.
Mark, I'm sorry.
not to worry at all. Thanks for spending the time with us
Bet.
and being willing to assist us to continue to, first of all. Secondly, about the listening skills, which you said is one of the top 3 things. Could you take a moment and expound a little bit on how you view that, what you like to achieve with listening, and how you use it as a tool?
Sure.
Thank you.
That determines my course of action. There's a lot of problems in this school.
Sir, can I interrupt?
And by listening,
Would you
oh,
kindly
sure.
Speak in the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No,
There-
it's all good.
The thing about listening is, people tend to have a lot of personal agendas, and like I said earlier, my agenda is not my agenda, it's the students. So when I say listening, I listen to a parent. If a parent tells me that a student's not getting attention at school or he's being bullied, I need to address that as a board member, as a member of the community, as a neighbor. I need to address that. If I have a teacher comes to me and says, I can't feed my kids, you know, I've got 2 jobs, I can't feed my kids, what am I going to do? I need to address that. Listening means understanding, it means acquiring knowledge, and it means applying that knowledge to solving a problem. There's so many problems, as you all know. I mean, you guys wrestle with these problems every day. I think listening part, it allows you to prioritize. You can't tackle all the problems in this district at one time, maybe not even in a year. But what you can do is zero in on what's really critical right now for our students. So by listening, if you keep the students number one, and then you listen to all the parties, all the stakeholders, then you can apply the proper action to the students. And vice versa. Students are hard to listen to sometimes, especially for a guy my age. I can't stand to listen to some of these young kids, and, you know, it's the way they talk. But, you know, that's part of it. You've got to listen, you got to understand. You don't have to agree with people. A lot of people I don't agree with, but I sure listen to them. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
You bet.
Wanting to give time for pause. From your perspective, what are the strengths of District 38 and what are the challenges? How do you see the board working to address these challenges?
Boy, challenges, that could take an hour. What do I think the strengths are? The strengths are people in this room right here. It's you, it's Teresa, it's Tiffany, it's everybody here. These are the strengths. It's the faculty that we've been able to attract. I don't know how we've been able to attract them. I know what the pay is. When I talk about pay, I don't talk about D38. I talk about pay in general. You know, people always talk about teachers, firemen, police, first responders. They don't all deserve big money. Like I said, I'm performance-based. I believe in earning what you achieve. You need to earn it. I don't believe, like, for example, I don't believe in minimum wage. I don't believe in minimum starting salary. I think you start out at 0, prove yourself, and then the roof's the limit. You know, if I'm a teacher, if I'm a good teacher, if I'm a professional teacher, I would go to a school board and say, look, I will work for you for a year for nothing. If I turn out to be your top teacher, you're going to pay me X next year, and the year after that, and you're going to pay my health insurance. And I would gladly do it. If that guy or woman proved to me over the course of a year that they were willing to get up every morning and do that. I've seen it in the military, and I know it can be done in schools. I know it is being done in schools. Excuse me. There are top-performing schools around the country that employ strategies and tactics that allow them to be the highest achievers in the country. I heard the other day, I don't know if this is true or if this is fake news. Maybe you guys know. You listen to the news loud like I do. I heard the Chinese are teaching quantum mechanics in 8th grade to their children, and that they only allow their kids on social media a couple hours a day. Strictly monitored what they do. And that's not the kind of life I would want to live under, the kind of regime I would want to live under. But if I ever went to a war with a country like that, we'd be in deep doo-doo. Just my opinion. So we've got a lot invested in our kids. Our kids are our future. I say it's hard for me to listen to some of these teenagers. I love them. I like them. You know, I go to all their football games, basketball games. You know, I got good friends that play for both schools. But they're difficult, and I think it's frustrating, their lack of knowledge, their ignorance of the world. I mentioned something about curriculum in my replies. You said, what are one of the top 3 things? It is curriculum. And I think there's something missing. I don't know if I'm going to get this position or not, but I will tell you this. There's something missing in our education system today, and that is civics and its history. I do not know how a country this advanced and this successful and this powerful in today's age with all the tools that we have, these kids, they've got laptops, they've got phones, they've got phones in their phones, but yet they know nothing about the history or founding of this country or the founding principles. When I said curriculum is my #1 priority for being on the board, I meant that in the sense that I would push as hard as I can to help add those elements to the curriculum if they're not there already. I don't have a radical agenda, but I do think the Constitution, the founding principles, and the history, and if you teach history, I don't teach it all. Don't cover anything up, you know. Don't try to, you know, make it not what it is. If you want to talk about racism, talk about race, talk about slavery, talk about what we did to the Indians. I think that needs to be learned. And those are very powerful things we can't cover up. They're part of our history. There are great things about our country, too, and all those things need to be explored and studied in a fair and balanced way. I'm not sure I answered the whole question. Was there something else about that? I got a feeling I missed something.
Do you want
It's
to
like a
just
2 or 3
restate the
part-
question for him?
Happy to restate the question.
I'm very bad at many-part questions because I'm 78 years old. I
Okay.
can't remember all that stuff.
So the question was, from your perspective, what are the strengths of District 38 and what are the challenges?
Okay, the people, like I said, are the strengths. The challenges are keeping good teachers, making sure we got the resources to pay these teachers, making sure we got the resources to do all the programs that we need to do. I heard something the other day, it kind of bothered me. I don't know if it's true here. It's that only 12% of the students, generally speaking, are able to participate in sports or extracurricular activities due to finances. So in other words, you may have a kid, a sophomore in high school, that's a heck of a running back. You know, he runs a 4.2 40, and yet he can't play football because his parents can't come up with the money for the uniform. I mean, that's just, you know. So finances, people, programs, I think all those things are things that we should probably be doing. The challenges are, can't even list the you know what the challenges are. Turn on the television. You want to see what the challenges are. Man, stuff I see on TV, if that were going on here in these schools, you wouldn't see me sitting here. You'd see me sitting in that school. Enough said on that. Okay, those are the challenges. I can't name them all. Too many.
Okay,
It's the end of my answer.
Thank you.
excellent. Our next question. How do you envision prioritizing your time as a board member?
Pardon me?
How do you envision prioritizing your time as a board member?
I'm not sure I understand that question fully. How would I prioritize my time? If I got a choice between going fishing or going to a board meeting, am I going to go to the board meeting? Yes, I'll do that. It's a priority. I've been asked to do this on understanding it's a temporary, it's 6 months, and there'll be an election in 6 months. Whether or not I have no ambition, really, to run for the board. That's not my ambition. That said, if this experience for me on the board shows me that I can make a difference and that I am making a difference, I will weigh that decision and whether it's to run or not in November. I couldn't possibly say now. I have no idea what's going to happen down the road here. I mean, I don't know how much. I'll tell you this. This is probably what you ought to know about me real quick, right on the front end. I am not a smartphone person. I don't text, tweet, Facebook. I don't do any social media. I consciously walked away from technology. When I retired in 2005, they were just giving out laptops. Just giving out laptops to executives. Up until then, I had a pager and a little old-fashioned cell phone. I never embraced this whole phenomenon of texting, tweeting, emailing, all that. I don't do that. Now, that said, I know I've got to make accommodations if I'm selected to this board, and I will make those accommodations. But just know that that's not me. If you send me a text and you don't hear from me in a day or so, hey, unless I know there's something that I'm required to do or respond to. Call my home, I'll talk to, I do most of my correspondence by writing letters in cursive and talking on the phone or talking face-to-face. It's worked well for me up till now. We'll see if it continues. But the other thing is that in line with communications is this business of, I'm not familiar with this, I hear about it from my wife. People that get all these threats online and they're bullied and they're harassed and, I mean, I don't know. I guess this stuff goes on. I've not seen much of it. I hear about it, but it's not part of my world. It's not part of my life, and nor will I let it be. Okay? So I just wanted to throw that out to you. I'm not one of these techie persons with two phones going all the time. I don't even know where my phone is right now. I have a wristwatch phone and for emergencies. That's it. So, any other questions?
Excellent.
Don't be afraid to ask me questions, because I'm not afraid to answer them. I
Well,
don't
we've got a
have
few
any
more.
agenda here.
Well, we've got a few more, and your next one is when approached by a concerned parent and/or community member, how would you respond to their requests or concerns?
Well, that would depend on the request and how it was presented. It would depend on the request, and it was reasonable. I'd listen to it. I'd act on it. You know, you would deal with it just like you would deal with any, you know, if your neighbor came to you and said, you know, your music's too loud, or you're cutting your grass too low, or, you know, you deal with it without being biased or without being, trying not to be biased and not to be prejudicial, you know. You try to get all the facts. If somebody does come, if a parent did come to me, and I hope they do, I would hope as board member that would be our main interface, would be with parents, not with each other, but with parents. And I think that's the learning. That's where I really anticipate learning. And I say my lines of communication are not open. Parents are a different story. I get a parent call me or a student call me. That's different. I'm on that, I'm on that right away. I would ask the parent, if all parents are going to have questions, they're all going to have issues with their kids, no matter what. Smart kids, dumb kids, ugly kids, pretty kids, they're all going to have issues. And the thing is, I ask them to bring facts, bring specifics. If you have a complaint about a teacher, this, that, or the other thing, I want time, date, very specific details of whatever they're presenting, not just some vague concept, oh, they're too dismissive over there, or they're too aggressive, or I don't like, you know, I want, you know, be very specific what the issue is and we can deal with it. But I welcome, that's the kind of interface and interaction I would expect and welcome as a board member. I say that now. I don't know that I'll say that in November. I'm a rookie in this. You know, you guys scarred up. You've been doing this a while. I don't know. I got a thin skin, and I got a short temper. Probably shouldn't have said that. But,
Thank you for your honesty.
yeah, you're welcome. More questions?
Okay. With only 1 or 2 meetings per month, all school boards are limited in what they can do. How should the board decide what's most important?
Well, it depends on what's happening at that given time. You may have an agenda for the board next week. We're going to discuss X. We prepared, every board member's done their homework. They've prepared the materials to cover X. Well, 2 days before the meeting, some kid has an issue at school, a big issue, big political issue. Well, all of a sudden, this X agenda is, that's backed up. Now you got to focus on it. So it's just a matter of priorities. I think it's just being able, as a group, to prioritize where we need to go. And that's just a team, I think that's a team dynamic, I'm guessing. I mean, I don't think people here on the board make individual decisions or So I think it'd just be a collaborative coming together and setting priorities and addressing it. Keep asking. I'm ready to answer more questions. I
Okay.
got a feeling, pardon me, I have a feeling that all of you have a lot of questions in the back of your head right now you'd love to ask me. So go ahead. Don't be shy. I mean, I know this is a high-paying job and there's a lot at stake.
I'll follow up with
Okay.
one that's been on my mind since I
Yes.
first started speaking. So you mentioned that you are not as aware of what's been going on in the district locally?
I'm
Or did
not
I
aware.
misunderstand that?
Not as aware as you are.
Oh, I understand.
Not as aware as you are. I'm probably as much aware as any citizen in Palmer Lake. Not as much. I'm not inside baseball with. I mean, we've got so many friends all the time we lived here. I'd say half our friends are either teachers, administrators, or board members, or one school district or another. I mean, I got school stuff. It's kind of embedded in us. But no, there's more to your question, I have a feeling, though.
Well, in terms of the prioritizing, so we've been working under a long-term strategic plan. I just didn't know if you were aware of that, or have you?
Not the specifics.
Yeah, completely understandable. I'm just wondering what your common knowledge of the board in recent years is, knowing that your daughter has been graduated for a while or moved on. So I was just wondering about your current knowledge of.
I'm not familiar with your long-term strategic plan, no.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to learning a lot about the plan, the curriculum, the process. There's a reason this district is number one. I don't know if it's number one. I know you're in the top 4 or 5. And there's a reason for that. And I want, whatever that reason is, I want to maintain that. But I don't want to just maintain it. I want to make it better. Because if you're not making it better, you're going to start getting poorer. Status quo never works. Business, education. So I imagine the strategic plan is to maintain and improve what you got going now. Now, how you do that, I don't know if I'm even on board with your strategic plan because I don't know it. I might be. I probably will be. But any other questions? Matthew, you got a question.
I always have questions, my friend.
Yeah.
So based on your knowledge of being a community member, what are the top 3 issues that are facing this district right now?
The district or the community?
The
They're
district.
different. All right, I would say getting good faculty, acquiring and maintaining good faculty. And boy, that's a lot more than money. That involves a lot in a teacher. Like I said, I'd like to attract a teacher that can show me performance, a teacher that can show me they're willing to work at minimum wage for a period of time in exchange for a much better benefit package down the road if they perform. The ones that don't perform, you just get rid of them. I don't know how difficult that process is, with the teachers' unions. I'm not familiar with just how tied your hands are. So acquiring teachers, good professional teachers. I say professional teachers, not just somebody with a teaching credit. I don't consider them a teacher, just like I don't consider somebody out of boot camp a soldier. Far from it. And anybody knows that you've got to pay your dues before you're worth anything. So that would be one, faculty, acquiring, supporting, and developing the best faculty we can. Number 2, I think, is you have to engage the parents, and I don't think that is going to be that difficult a challenge. It may have been in the past when things were sailing along, Johnny was coming home with A's and B's, and everybody was happy. The challenges now, I think, are much more social, and I think outreach to parents is also going to be critical, because if you want buy-in for this district, for these students, if you want people to buy in and you want them to vote for mill levies, et cetera, you have to show them a product. You have to be able to show numbers and performance that their kids are getting the best product you can deliver. So parents are key to that, and you need to bring them in, you need to educate them, you need to motivate them, you need to show them what you've done, you need to show them what the consequences are of what districts that, what they've not done, whether that's PowerPoint, whether it's, just newsletters, whatever. But you need to talk to, and I don't want to say court parents, but you need to keep them informed as to what you're doing, why you're doing it. And this is where I said earlier, transparency comes in. If you're not transparent, parents don't know what's going on. If you want their buy-in, you need to let them know what's going on. So I think that's number 2. Faculty. And I think the third thing is curriculum. Like I said earlier, I firmly believe you could graduate kids in high school in 2 years very easily if you cut out all the crap. And they come in to go to work. I'm a disciplinarian. You come in, you take your hat off, you sit down, and you go to work, and you put in 8 hours in the class. And you do that even 4 days a week. You graduate these kids in 2 years. But there's a whole lot of overhaul in the system before you can do that. That's kind of pie in the sky right now. That works in military schools and private schools, but some of those principles, I think, need to be inculcated into the public school system. My problem, I think, the challenges that we all face, whether it's this district, District 20, is from above. I think most of the local products come from above. And I know funding is a huge issue. I know you have to do certain things to be eligible for funding, but those are all issues that, we have to look at and consider. This probably isn't the forum to even bring that up, but what else? Did I not answer? There's another part of that question.
I think you covered it, my friend. Thank you.
You sure? All right. I didn't want to dodge it, but
And with about 10 minutes, we have roughly 5 questions left on our list. So our next question is, can you please describe the Board of Education's role as it relates to the superintendent's role in our district? What expectations would you have as you work with the superintendent?
generally speaking, I would say management, oversight and management. Oversight of the process, assisting in managing the process, establishing buy-in from the community. I mean, you've got to have buy-in from all the stakeholders to make anything work. I think that's about it.
Excellent. Can you describe the kind of relationship you'd like to have with your fellow board members?
Very cordial, open, honest, transparent, like I would like any group of friends that I just joined. That said, I don't want 5 or 6 texts every day or every hour. I don't do that. Please understand, it's not because I don't like you, it's just that I don't do that. Life's too short for that. I have other priorities. Go ahead. Tiffany, you got a question?
No, actually, I'm enjoying this.
You're enjoying this, huh? Oh, okay. Well,
I guess a follow-up question I would have is, I want to make sure we get through all of these as well. I want to make sure we get through the rest of the questions as well. So any follow-up questions I have, I can delay until we finish.
Excellent. And our next question is, how should the board go about engaging with district stakeholders?
I'm not sure I understand that question. How should they go about engaging with the stakeholders? I don't understand that.
With residents and community members, how should the board go about gathering input?
Oh, okay. Well, that is a good question, because I don't have an answer for that. I suppose you all would know better than I do what outreach strategies work and which don't work. I mean, you can speed dial people all day long, I suppose, or you could stand on a corner with a big sign that says, "I'm a board member, come and talk to me." And that may not be the worst idea. I just came into my head, but actually sitting out, you see all these people sitting out in front of Safeway with these little signs, you know. Yeah, I'm a board member, you want to talk? That might be a way. See, I'm not, like, electronic media would obviously be the way, and I may figure out, I have friends that are very adept at, and so I may utilize electronic media to send out a blast. I don't even know what that is, but I have friends that do, and so, yeah, we can electronically reach out and send messages and try to get feedback and do surveys. I'm not sure how effective all that is, though. You guys know. To me, what's effective is face-to-face. If a student's got a problem, I would be happily go sit down with that student's parents and discuss the problem and work through it. I'm much more hands-on that way than I am electronically. I'm not one for tweeting back and forth to a parent. I'd rather go have lunch with them, have a cup of coffee with the kid, and let's talk about it and work it out. That's my approach, and it'll always be my approach. Face-to-face if I can, otherwise on the phone. Worst case scenario, electronic communication. That's the only thing that's left to get a message across. I'll use that. Any other questions?
What legacy would you like to leave as a result of your time on the board?
That you just didn't regret putting me on the board. I don't know, I don't need a plaque up here, you know, and just that you don't regret it. If I personally, me and my soul, yeah, if I can save one kid from being a dummy or from being a loser or a reject, if I can have some role in preventing that, it'd be worth it. Yeah, one kid would be worth it. So that's it, just so you don't regret it.
And our
And
last
you
question.
may, and you may. Just throw that out there. I have hopes and aspirations that I can really provide something to this board, but I also, at the same time, have some reservations as to whether or not I will be the fit. I may not be the right fit, but we'll know that come November, should you select me. You'll know by November if I'm worthy of re-election or not. I don't know, this is a big unknown for me. It's kind of scary. I've never interviewed for a job that didn't pay before. But it's scary because it's a huge responsibility. And I'm almost as scared to get the job as not, because if I get it, I know it's going to be a commitment. Wouldn't be here if I didn't know that. But we'll see. We'll see how much I'm willing to put into it and how much you're willing to put up with me. And if we can both make it work, I think it'd be fun. It'd be great. It could be a fun experience. You guys would know more than me. You've been doing this, I don't know how long. But you would know what satisfaction you get from it, what heartache you get from it, and which one of you are getting ready to resign. I don't know. I won't know till I walk in those shoes for a while. So, that's it.
And then our final question, is there anything else you'd like to share with the board?
No, other than I think this is a fine board. I think it's a fine school district, and I see no reason it shouldn't continue to be that way. I don't see any dark clouds on the horizon other than national ones. Local ones, I don't see anything that's that disturbing to me right now. Other than, like I said, the big thing is that you got to be able to fund these to get good teachers. And I don't know how you do that. That's a whole other skill set and challenge is, you know, how do you recruit professional teachers? Where do you go? Where do you find them? How do you incentivize them? To me, it's not money. If I want a professional teacher, money's not going to be his incentive. You know, a Navy SEAL, his incentive isn't that paycheck he gets at the end of the month. You could not even send that guy the check. He'd care less. A teacher, a really good teacher, is a teacher that would work for free. You give me a teacher that'll work for free, and I'll pay that teacher handsomely. Handsomely. Because a professional teacher, to me, is probably the most important profession in the United States. If we're going to pay Tom Brady $40 million, I'm not saying pay a teacher $40 million, but certainly $100,000 is nothing. If I was a teacher, if I was a good teacher, I'd want $100,000. I'm not afraid to say that. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. Not under the current system. But if we made it such that we could attract, other industries can attract the top professionals. All industries attract the top professionals. And they pay them and they compensate them well. And they turn out a product. You know, these big CEOs of these corporations, how can they make 400, 500 million a year? They're worth it. They are worth it. Let me tell you. You take a guy, you take a CEO like that, put him in charge of a school system in a couple of years. The Chinese won't be the only ones teaching their kids quantum mechanics in 8th grade. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to hearing from you.
And we appreciate your time. Thank
You're
you for
more
the
than welcome.
opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
No, thank you so much.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a great
Thank
day.
you so much.
You as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Norris?
I can do that. I'm really loud, so the microphone's not going to help.
Good morning. If you don't mind using the microphone, it helps because we're recording
Yes, ma'am.
and streaming, so it's helpful to the public who may not be here in person. But good morning and welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
We, the way we have this interview set up is that Mr. Belcher is going to be asking a series of questions. There's actually 11, 12 questions and about 30, 45 minutes time frame. And there may be some clarification or follow-up questions from any of us at any time. So, and is there anything we can do to help you at the moment? You've got paper and water there. Is there anything else you might need?
No, ma'am. Y'all are
Okay.
great. Thank you.
So with that, we'll let Mr. Belcher go ahead and start.
Hi there. Thanks for being here. My name is Mark Belcher, Director of Communication and Public Relations. I've got a series of 11 questions for you. I'm going to let you answer directly to the board. You can pretend I'm not here. And I'll give a gentle pause and I'll ask the next question. So our first question is, please start by sharing why you're interested in serving on the Board of Education.
Okay. So I'd like to be engaged in policies, district policies, and learning objectives as it relates to children. And I want to ensure the organization is, the institution is high quality, that provides equitable, fair, and inclusive environment for kids to learn.
Excellent. What top 3 attributes are essential for successful school board members? How have you demonstrated these attributes in prior experiences?
People skills, long-term thinking, and accountability. So I've got a pretty extensive background in leadership, people skills being the most important, because you come across so many different types of people. You don't know how they're going to react. You don't know what they're going to do, and you have to be able to adjust on the fly to be able to address their needs, their concerns. Long-term thinking. Sometimes budgets, in my experience, capital expenditure budgets are expensive up front that take 5 or 6 or 7 years to repay dividends. So long-term thinking, it might be painful in the short term that will pay long-term dividends and change the institution. And accountability, that's number one. Accountability, you have to be accountable for your actions. You have to be accountable to your decisions. And that accountability leads to a disciplined approach for organizations.
Excellent. From your perspective, what are the strengths of District 38 and what are the challenges? How do you see the board working to address these challenges?
So D38 consistently ranks high for education. Their strength is the quality of the education in the institution. Weaknesses or challenges, opportunities, teacher retention, teacher salaries, and funding, and those are consistently being looked at by the board. They're always evaluating the budget constraints. I know there's MLOs in work that can potentially raise those salaries. So I do know the board is actively engaged in addressing those opportunities.
Excellent. How do you envision prioritizing your time as a board member?
So you can't really put that into a box, right? You have 2 meetings a month, one in the evening times and your work meetings, and you can't accomplish all your activities in those timeframes. You have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to respond to people, to teachers, to staff outside of business hours. So I envision that support and ability. I have the flexibility in my work schedule to accomplish those tasks. And again, you can't box that up into set times. You just have to work outside the scope, and you have to address those needs as they become available.
Excellent. When approached by concerned parents and or community members, how would you respond to their requests or concerns?
Again, back to the people skills. You don't want to be reactive, okay? You can acknowledge their concerns. You write their concerns down, bring it to the board to address and prioritize. You guys have the historical knowledge of what's been going on in the community, and you have priorities that you need to address. But what you don't want to do is immediately respond to the concern and address that without other board members' knowledge.
With only 1 or 2 board meetings per month, all school boards are limited in what they can do. How should the board decide what's most important?
Again, the history that I don't have there. You want to collaborate via email, via communications, telephone. You want to establish those priorities. Those priorities are probably already established, and you're addressing them as needed. But again, you're going to have to work outside the confines of those 2 meetings a month. You're going to have to commit time. I would probably say it's fair to commit 5 to 10 hours a week to address those priorities and concerns.
Describe the Board of Education's role as it relates to the superintendent's role in our district. What expectations would you have as you work with the superintendent?
I would see the board as a steering committee, policy adjuster. The superintendent's role is to carry out those policies and ensure strict adherence to those policies. Again, leading to the fair and equitable, safe environment that the kids need to thrive in.
Can you describe the kind of relationship you'd like to have with your fellow board members?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would love to have an equitable relationship, a friendly relationship. We have to be able to collaborate. Not everybody's decisions are going to be the same. There is a give and take there, and you have to come together regardless of a yes or no answer, and continue to maintain communications and friendly relationships.
Can you describe how the board should go about engaging district stakeholders?
So we have public meetings, right, that we can address stakeholders. We have opportunities outside of those two meetings, again, reiterating the need that we can't box it up into those two meetings only. You have to go above and beyond those times to address those stakeholders. So they're going to be done via email, via telephone calls, and again, issues and concerns should be brought to the board, not to be made independently without seeking counsel.
What legacy would you like to leave as a result of your time on the board?
Certainly would like the opportunity to leave this educational institution better than how we found it. Increased salaries, increased retention rates, better collaboration between parents, teachers, board, and superintendent, and again, overall increase in the quality of education that D38 provides.
What would you say adds to better collaboration among different entities?
Again, public meetings, public input, roundtable discussions, skip level meetings, just general public interaction where we can hear their concerns and address their concerns.
And then our last question is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm going to be 100% committed to this position. I'm going to go provide the hours needed, necessary to accomplish the tasks that have to be done. And I just need to make sure that you guys understand that I'm going to be committed to you. I'm going to be committed to the board. I'm going to be committed to the teachers, the parents, and the school district.
I have one more
Yes, ma'am.
follow-up question myself. Thank you. In speaking and also in your application, you mentioned an inclusive, fair, and equitable environment. Can you expound on that or give specifics as to how what kind of environment is that?
So children, right, being the most important, teachers, parents, the children should be able to, and the teachers should be able to feel safe in their environment. They should be able to feel free with their individual identities. They should be able to learn without recourse for their background, and they should have the opportunity to excel in what they do.
Thank you. That's helpful. Anyone else have? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Good morning. First of all, thanks for taking the time, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
Secondly, this is an off-cycle opening, right? And so there's an election coming up in about 6 months, somewhat of a short window in which to operate and work. But with respect for that window, what are the top couple things you would like to achieve while you're here for at least 6 months?
So that's a good question. That's a really good question. I'm not intending to rock the boat. So I need to get engaged in the policies and see where we're at policies. I need to get engaged in the issues and concerns that we have here on the board. Again, teacher retention being the most important, I feel. So there's a lot of continuity in teacher retention, teacher recruitment and training outside of salary. As a leadership background, it's tough to motivate and retain people to stay when the salary isn't there. Those are things I would like to address.
Thank you.
You mentioned, well, first of all, thank you for being here. A little over 8 years ago, I was appointed to this board, so I have a small understanding of probably what you're feeling and what it took for you to be here and decide to throw your name in the hat. So thank you so much. You mentioned teacher retention, but one of the challenges we have in District 38 is we're one of the highest performing but the lowest funded. And as you're aware, we've gone to the stakeholders a couple times with the MLO. We've been unsuccessful. From an outside perspective, not being on the board, if we decided to move forward, either this year or sometime in the future, what do you think we could do better than we've done in the past?
As it specifically relates to funding?
Yes.
Again, examination of your budget overall. So I don't know the scope of D38 budget, but where you don't get approval for budget, where you don't get extra money, you have to go examine projects, other items that may shore up funds. If you're specifically looking to address retention as it relates to teachers' pay, I don't know what that percentage is. But you have to be creative and you have to do workaround plans and examine those budget shortfalls where you can maybe slide it over to a teacher bonus, a salary bonus, or additional pay.
Thank you.
In terms of when you spoke to time commitments and there's no box and it needs to be flexible, how much flexibility do you have to be inside the buildings and hearing the teachers and seeing the teachers in action and visiting with the kids in the schools?
I do have the capacity to support that. Again, my schedule has been reduced quite a bit where I find myself here at home a lot more. I don't know if you're looking for anything specifically committed for walking around and if that's 3 times a month, if it's 4 times a month for a few hours a day, I can support that.
And then my follow-up to that question is, what value do you see in doing that?
That's a lot of value, right? As far as process improvement goes, you basically get down to the floor and you see what's going on to the floor. You hear the teachers' concerns, you hear the admin concerns. If there's parent engagement, you hear the parent concerns, and you start getting a bigger picture of D38 district as a whole, so you can start addressing those concerns.
We really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
And we plan on making an announcement on Friday morning. So, and I know you weren't here at the beginning of this meeting, so you can expect to hear from us between now and Friday.
Excellent.
So we look forward to being in touch with you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate
thanks so
the
much.
opportunity, and I look forward to that decision.
And thank you for stepping forward. I know that this can be an intimidating process, and so appreciate and applaud
Absolutely.
both of our candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to take just a short recess because for this work session, we need to reassemble some tables and chairs. So between 5 and 10 minutes, we'll return. Thank you.
You need help with that?
No, that's very, very nice of you to offer.
A recess.
The budget assumptions and the final preview of the salary schedules. I believe that's Mr. Brett Ridgway.
Is it easier to, do you want to maneuver it, or? Just tell me to get out of the way.
Okay, good morning. In board docs, I posted 2 items, and I just posted them yesterday, so I just want to apologize that I did not get things posted in the board docs for your review ahead of the meeting, either for this item or the next item. And so what we have in there are these 2 items. Number 1, this is the section of the regular financial report, and we talked a couple months ago about breaking the FP&A update into the financial section and then the staffing section as well, and then covering them separately in the meetings. And maybe that conversation was just between myself and Mr. Taylor. I don't know, but what I have in here is the staffing section. And so this, when I do these staffing reports in the financial report, those are based off the last payroll that was run. Okay, and so so this is as of March. So as of the March 27th payroll, where we had 827 regular employees paid, and gross, and if we annualize that data, and the reason I've been working with this annualized set is just kind of a way to take what is our current status and say if that status projected pro forma out for 12 months, what does that result, and how does that compare to the amounts that we have budgeted, and so on this report, what I'm wanting to show you here at the top again is that of our 827 regular employees, the way that we processed payroll in March would be provide an annualized $33.9 million spend for gross pay, and our budget for gross pay is $35 million. So we are running in a good place on an annualized projection, kind of pro forma, again, theoretical view with our current staffing that tells us that we are still have open positions, which we'll talk about in the next budget, next agenda item as well. And so that's a kind of a main point I want you to be able to take away from seeing these sheets is this data that's up here at the top, and how are we running with the budget. Then what we have here, of course, in these other pages, or in these graphs, and then the subsequent pages, is starting to break down that information to various subsets that are of particular interest, either because of the fund that it is coming from, meaning that source of revenue that is being used to fulfill that compensation, and then within each fund, what is the employee segment? So administrators, licensed teachers, professional, technical, and classified staffing. The dots that are on here indicate the number of staff that we have in each of those categories. The orange and the blue columns represent the actual and the budget, meaning the full year actual and the full year budget, again, that we have set up for those segments in that fund. So,
Questions?
yes, sir.
And maybe points of clarification. So, is this a year-to-date? Is this a fiscal year-to-date view?
This is not a fiscal year-to-date view. This is
a full year projection.
It's a most recent payroll annualized.
Therefore, it's a full year projection.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where we anticipate at this juncture of the fiscal and educational year where we will finish. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. It's also related to what we budgeted for at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then was there any adjustment to the budget at the midpoint? We talked about flex budgeting, which you had a more elegant term for called?
The amended budget.
Much more elegant, thank you.
I don't think it's more elegant. I think it's more statutorily correct,
That
just
may
to
be too.
clarify.
Okay. So, did we make an adjustment? I'm sorry, did we amend it?
So the only amended change that we made was to pay out this winter bonus. And so that is baked into the blue columns, but it is not baked into the orange columns.
Right.
Okay?
And then the last question I have, just for clarification of the team here and anybody listening in, is the budgeted amounts, are they statutory or are they discretionary?
The budget amounts are up to the local authorities,
Right, which would be us,
which would be you,
and potentially your team. And
as an information provider to you. But yes, no, I would really say it is your decision.
So I just want to make sure we as a team understand what he just said. Okay. You're
You're bringing up a really good point, and I want to.
And I don't intend to digress from where you were going,
Okay.
but I do intend to put it in perspective in that no one told us to put this much money in the fund for licensed teachers. It's not a law or a rule,
Right.
right? We did what we thought was the right thing to do based on experience, historical trends, and expertise. And it's likely 100% correct, but it's still discretionary.
Can I jump in there? With the exception of those that are funded through grants, oft sometimes.
That would be correct. And that probably represents what percent of the total?
Right there.
Well, it is. I have to do math on the fly.
Less than 5 likely?
50. It's 50. It's 50 people out of our 800, so it's less than 1%.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask, or
Less than-
point, sorry. On the administrators, that 31.5, that includes building principals and vice principals as well.
Yes, it does.
That's not just sometimes when you hear folks, I'm bringing this up because sometimes folks get in their mind, what is an administrator? So defining the difference between an administrator here in Big Red versus in the buildings, and what is a professional technical individual. So I think sometimes folks confuse the two. So I think it's
No, that's a really good point, and people are always bringing their own bias, their own perspective to that conversation whenever they introduce that topic or bring up that topic, and a lot of times people can mean anyone that's in this actual building to them qualifies as administration. It's administration, but that's not an administrator. And so that's, again, some of the clarity we need to try and project into that conversation to make sure that people don't run away with misinformation, because exactly as you're saying, there are 31 administrators. Of them working here in this building, I think it's a single-digit number. The rest are in the schools. Those are where the vast majority of the administrators are at. What I wanted to follow up on what you were saying, Mr. Schwartz, is you made a good reminder of me for me to include in here. Again, these orange columns, this year-to-date actual is just taking last month's payroll times 12, and then comparing that to the budget. So it says, hey, as we are sitting today, how does that compare to our budget? And are we trending to go over budget? Are we trending to go under budget? Because that is last month's actual, it does not include the winter bonus, right? The winter payment. And so this $1 million variance that exists here, that winter payment though is in the blue columns. And so that is basically the extent of the variance between actual and budget in this. And so we are trending really tight to the budget.
And the other variable that would be important to know based on your explanation, if we just took last month, which I assume is March, for this exercise, did we have significantly more or less, and let's look at licensed teachers for a minute, on payroll than we did at the beginning of the year? Because that would generate a potential discrepancy is the wrong word. It could enable us to be misprojecting.
Well, it could, yeah, and that's a really good idea, and that's exactly where I wanted to head with this, because this is a point in time, kind of a point in time type of picture of information.
Yep.
The next set of information to this would be something that trends over time, that spans time, right? And so to see, I think especially these individual dot points over the months is kind of the next iteration of what I want to provide onto this, and to say, is this increasing, is this decreasing, is it staying relatively flat?
Right. And we're probably at the point in the year, please correct me if I'm not getting this right, where we should be able to look at year-to-date actuals too. And because
Definitely.
we're 3 quarters through.
Definitely. And the whole reason that I am starting here and kind of emphasizing this point is because when I start to then consider the subsequent year budget, I'm modeling it based off of where are we at now, meaning what is our current staffing level, not what our budgeted staffing level is, where are we at right now, and launching that into a 23-24 modeling exercise. And so in the other file with the data, with the package that I showed you last month, where we talked specifically about this information here, and we said, here's my projection of what I have modeled for each of the employee segments based on a proposed pay schedule that is then later in this document. That's how this modeling is done. And so this, what I showed you last month, was based off of the February payroll data set. Since then, I have been able to take the March payroll data set and reapply the assumptions to it. And that is I think the big takeaway that I'd like for you to hear from me today is that I'm still modeling that the pay schedules that I presented to you in draft form are viable based on the new data set. So that, I think, should provide you some good comfort, as it provides me some good comfort, that those pay schedules that I presented are looking like a really good scenario for us to proceed with.
May I ask one more question, just
Sure.
For perspective? Thank you. Since we're using single month increments, but we budget and receive revenues for a full year, what is the elasticity on a month-to-month basis for our staff levels or payroll?
What I see generally is a plus or minus 3% per month.
So it's relatively straight line.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. You know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It is fairly stable. So I know last month we spent a lot of time going through all of this information, and I think one of the things I wanted to make sure is that we had an opportunity to say, what has been your thoughts, if any, since then? Is there any questions that I can answer for you? Is there any other priorities that you would like to suggest or to put out there for this proposal?
Oh, I see it. Is this page 14 of the current?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a page number there in the lower right-hand corner, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you. Duly noted.
Yeah.
Can you ask that question again? You asked, is there,
But for this proposal, and so let me reset just a couple pieces about it, right? When I did the revenue modeling and talked about the new money, and I talked about how as an administration we're going through an exercise to identify some efficiencies and find some monies that we can redeploy from the volume side of our equation to the rate side of our equation. And so we are coming up with this total money to apply to pay changes of about $3.6 million. Of that $3.6 million, 600 or 700,000 of it in this case needed to be spent towards para and Medicare, and that would leave $2.9 million that goes just to the pay schedules themselves. That 2.9 was a key number then, that when we came to this summary schedule of of the proposal and how that money would apply across the segments, that it tied to this 2.994 number. So the 2.991 was a 2.994 checkpoint, if you will. And then how is that 2.994 distributed across the segments is where we go vertically up this column. And so my question is, are you comfortable with how that 2.994 is invested and is distributed across the segments, yielding these type of results in average pay changes across those segments? Right, so the 2.994, I'd said 1.67 of that would be invested in teacher pay, and that would yield an average across that segment of 8.82%. An average dollar change of $4,309 year to year.
Is this with the projection from the state?
This is with the assumed revenue increase that I am utilizing of 8%. Now, it is possible that, it obviously will come in something different than 8.0%, on the dot. If I'm doing my job correctly, I'm aiming us just a little bit low, so that if it comes in at 8.2, then we know how we can redeploy that, in these assumptions. But it shouldn't come in at 10. If it comes in at 10, then I didn't do well in setting that initial assumption.
So another quick question, just more for review from last time.
Mm-hmm.
On a macro basis, in general, our pay gap with our peers/competitors is around 8%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we looked at this last time, this would take about a quarter of that off the table, or essentially a 2% net reduction of that gap, if you will. Is that still based on our knowledge of what's happening around us about right?
I have not heard anything different than that since then, yes. So meaning that, again, if we go back to this schedule, to tie into your question here, what I'm wanting to come to is that $2.99 million across our entire staffing segment would indicate an average change in pay of 9% on the gross pay side. And to your point, what I said then and and I haven't received any new information to this point is that no one is projecting more than a 6 to 7%. And so, yes, this would close the gap, but it would not. It would not close the gap. It would make some progress towards narrowing the gap, I should say, but it would not close the gap.
Is this okay? The only other thing I would add to what Brett's mentioning is that, and this is, it's on the record, but I'm hearing that there will be multiple districts likely pursuing an MLO for next November. So I just feel like that's worth calling out because with those districts, I believe the goal is to tackle compensation much like we did this last November. So that's just food for thought.
That's correct. This is an all other things being equal type of conclusion that I'm presenting. Yes.
And some of our neighboring districts have already started to vote on their excuse me, their compensation increases, and they're averaging about 8% increase in compensation.
That's more than what I've been hearing, so that's interesting.
We'll likely have to wait for the actuals, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Quick question for my own clarification. Back on the your enumerated page 10,
Page 10.
it's the rainbow.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
That page.
So up above the 81.5% and the 18.5%.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
That is before
Yes.
the implementation of this. So
this
how do
80
those percentages swing again? Or are they written out somewhere?
They're not shown here. It's in this, this 81.5 and the 18.5 is based on this year's amended budget. That's the mix of personnel to non-personnel spend or implementation cost spend for this year's budget. If we make this type of swing, it does change that number, but it not to as large a degree as you might think. So it would be, I'd have to calculate it again. I think I calculated it on the fly last time, and I need to calculate it
That's all right.
more completely.
It's pretty easy to estimate, though.
But
because
yeah,
you're
it's,
working
you
with-
take your 43 and your 9, and you add the 3.6 here, and
It probably goes to about 80.5 or 80.0.
no, it goes out the other direction. The percentage, the personnel percentage will get bigger, closer towards 83.
Even though we're putting more into capital expense too.
Capital expense is not, capital allocation is actually a revenue item and not an expense item, technically speaking.
Why?
We still write a check, though.
It's a fund, it's because we spend that money in a different fund. And so we're talking general fund, and so it's an in and out of a general fund on the revenue side.
But it still ultimately comes in the general fund and then gets allocated someplace else.
It does.
So it's the same dollar until we decide where
Yes.
to put it.
It'd just be helpful to know that final percentage, if and when you can do it. Thank you.
Yes.
So I think the answer to my question might likely be the underfunding because for certain things in this fiscal year is some of that's being taken to capital for next fiscal year, right?
Yes, that's what this $1 million number is here
Exactly.
on this schedule, is
Exactly
to say,
right.
hey, we
Yep.
this year in 22-23, we only invested $2 million in capital maintenance
Right.
and projects, and next year we're requesting to go to $3 million.
Right, and we have to stop kicking the can down the road, and here's a way to do it.
Yes. And that's following up to all those conversations we had in January with Mr. Coulter.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, we'll be voting on this at our regular board meeting.
I was just,
The pay schedules.
Okay. And second clarification, and maybe this is for you, Mr. Ridgway, maybe this is for Ms. Wetstein, or even Ms. Welch, by the way. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have we heard any more feedback from our buildings that have been engaging with the Staff Collaboration Committee? I know we went right into spring break, so I wouldn't be surprised if the answer is
Related to the pay schedules?
yes. Yeah.
I think our last meeting was right before break, so I haven't heard anything anecdotally other than during the meeting there was great support for this direction.
I was there when my SCC members at Prairie Wind shared out with the staff what the focus was for the conversation, and there was comparable excitement. I think the one thing people were interested in hearing more about was how many years of service we would be able to give to some of our new hires, but a lot of people were excited about these positive changes. So,
Which to that,
We will talk about that later on in our policy discussion.
yep, and I'm just going to echo what was shared, but I have heard more anecdotally, and given the approach that SCC members had with their principals or whoever was part of who shared the information to the receiving audience, we've heard a lot of positive approval or appreciation. I think what's most important to know, and I don't know, Brett, if you have the slide somewhere, but it speaks to how the feedback that we've heard from staff is being acted upon. So that slide I'll just re-cue your attention to, because what it speaks to is here's what we've heard from staff, here is how we are responding. And to the point that was just made, where are we with number 5? There's some additional information that we have on that for you this morning, which we can jump to, or we can keep it on schedule, however you guys want to do that.
I appreciate that. I'm a big fan and proponent of making sure we're hearing voices.
I was also at the Bear Creek staff meeting following our last board meeting where the SEC member presented this, and it was also in the same vein, very well received. Concerns about the May bonus payments and the anniversary payments came up, but otherwise, quite a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I was curious about that anniversary too.
Any other questions for Mr. Ridgway? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to go on to item C2, which is the spring hiring and staffing update.
So Alicia and I will both speak to this. I will set the table a little bit with what I put into board docs again just yesterday, and my apologies for that. But so this is some data that I gathered that I want to present to you, I think, through the course of this hiring season, to tell you kind of where we're at and where the vacancies are, what roles they are in, and such. So what you'll see here on this report, and it's just numerical, not graphically presented, but what we have right now are 64 positions posted on our system. 44 of those are focused towards next year alone, and 20 are more immediate and probably have continuing impact on next year. So it is typically been that focus on those next year alone positions. Where are we at with those, and what is our stress points, if you will. And these are all by location here in this top left chart. The bottom left chart is the same 64 positions sorted by job category. What kind of role are we talking about? And there you can see I've highlighted the teaching and the special education items to say that of the 44 next year focus, there's 31 of those that are in those specific categories.
So basically 75% frontline.
Yes, 75% of next year's positions are towards those what I call really visible positions in teaching and special education. Yes. And I forgot to mention in the above chart, in terms of location based, 38% of those are school based vacancies. 38% of the 38 positions of the 44 positions are school based. Similar ratio. So what I do then next is bring those two perspectives together and look at the job categories by location. And so we're for just 23-24. So of the 44 roles, where are they at and what roles are they in? And so I'm kind of zooming in and out to try and find the right perspective to show everything here.
So you have a hiring heat map here.
Yes.
Just tells you where to spend your time.
And so I've boxed a couple of things there. I show a legend of those to say, hey, there's 3 of them that I put in red just because of the number of vacancies that are represented in that intersection, if you will. So, for instance, that's Bear Creek Elementary teaching position. There are 5 of our 44 roles, 44 postal positions are with that intersection. And then 6 high school teaching positions at Lewis Palmer High School, 4 middle school teaching positions at Lewis Palmer Middle School. Those are the 3 red ones, which just in and of themselves don't give you pause, but just something that to say, well, those are the big ones, and we want to keep an eye on those. The orange boxes come out with a further analysis when I start looking about the applications. So this is just about the number of posted positions. When I go down to the next page and I show you the number of applications that we currently have in play for each of those roles, you'll see that those red box roles, there's quite a number of applications to them. Now, again, this is just number count. This isn't really taking anything about the quality of those applicants, but it's just not 0 is all it's saying.
What does normal look like? How far from, if you, not that I want you to do another graphing exercise, because this heat map's great, right? Tells people where to spend their time and where to go, but is 24 pretty much normal for what we get for that kind of role? Is it significantly low or significantly high?
Well, I think in answer to your question, I think I would first like to go then to the average number of applications per posting, because I think that's where we'll have a better answer to that question. So that Bear Creek example, for instance, yes, there's 5 positions. Yes, there's 27 applications. That's 5.4 applications per posting. I think generally we would love to have something closer to 10.
Brett, is that an average, or is that actually how many applicants applied for each of those postings?
There's 27 applicants. and there's 5 positions posted.
And that's for that one.
For that one intersection,
Right.
point of Bear Creek Elementary School teaching positions.
Yeah, I get where I was going was if, given our fiscal pay, given our pay position in the region, our applications down.
Our applications are less than we would prefer them to be.
Are they down versus previous years?
I don't have that historical context, honestly.
I would say right now it feels like we have concern about specific hirings around special ed and mental health are really difficult positions to post. It
Yeah.
feels harder than it used to feel.
So, okay, but is it, yeah, I guess my question then is it more about the role versus the district?
I think it's more about the role than the district because I don't think it's only us who has this issue, but.
That was
I
my
don't
point.
know.
Thank you. Exactly. Thanks for answering it that way.
So on this heat map, with what you see, I then highlighted intersections where we have 1 or 2 or 0 applicants per posting. That's in the purplish highlight. The yellow highlight is just 3 per posting. So the fact that we only have a couple, 3 of them, I think, that have double digits, speaks to, yeah, it's still a fairly thin crop, but there, even with a thin crop, there are particular real points of emphasis on that. And so taking what I've noted here back up to the first page is where I've put these then yellowish boxes to say, hey, these are the roles where we have kind of a concern by the apps or the average number of apps that we have for those roles.
Where are we at in the hiring season? I'm assuming the season starts in January and runs through.
I think the season kind of starts in the middle of February. Is typically when we get our first postings, when any district does their first postings for the coming fiscal year. So it's got middle of February on. So, we definitely have seen resignations, which have led to these postings. So there definitely is activity already happening. But still, probably in the early third, maybe not even halfway through the hiring season, if you will.
I think we're moving things along well. When we find that there needs to be something posted, it's getting posted, taken care of, trying to support the process through good customer service so that we aren't holding anything up. Because what I have heard from some of the principals is when they do find a high quality candidate, they don't want us to be what holds the process up. So I think we're trying to consistently be on top of that right now.
Great, thank you.
There aren't any postings waiting to be finalized or anything. Everything's up that the principals want up. So I reached out to the principals via email and asked them how they feel the hiring season is going. And I think consistently there was one principal who said that he felt things were moving along okay, but others felt like there's few applications coming through for the specific positions. There's a number of, the reason I mentioned special ed and mental health is there's a number of those postings right now, and sometimes no one's applying for some of those positions. So we're trying to get creative and be proactive and not wait around. So Rick and I have talked some about different opportunities for capitalizing on some of the high quality people that we have in our buildings who may not be licensed, but who might be able to go through other licensing programs and options. I went to a job fair in Greeley a week and a half ago. I think I interviewed 5 people, sent those applicants right along to the principals who had positions that they were interested in. We have a job fair again on Friday at UCCS. We hope that it ends up being worth the time that we're putting into it. I think our specific focus right now is trying to really get our processes in place so that when things start moving, that we aren't what's holding people up as far as HR goes.
So again, this is information I will update and will provide you throughout the season here.
Super. Any other questions or concerns? Agenda item C2. Let's move on to C3. It's a policy update, introduction of revisions to policies. Who's taking? Ms. Wetstein?
Yeah, do I need to manipulate the, is this the main computer?
driving I can stand here.
I have two policies to present to you this morning as a first look at what I'll be bringing forward at the regular meeting on April 17th. The first one is IKF, our policy on graduation requirements. And let's see if I can pull up the red line version, which I may not be able to do. You have access to the red line version in your executive content. And I'll point out the change that we are proposing here, which is to eliminate the requirement of a credit for world language and to add an elective credit requirement so that the total 25 credit requirement would remain. However, we are getting input from our principals, number one, that there are some populations of students who do not require world language for their career goals. And in addition, we are struggling to find world language teachers, and therefore, by requiring all students to obtain that one credit, it is making it more difficult to provide that class to the students who are on a track where world language would be more applicable to their goals. So I'll pause there and happy to discuss questions or concerns you may have.
What's the classroom equivalent to one credit
It is a year's worth of instruction
at secondary level?
at high school
High
specifically.
school only.
So to that point, Mr. Schwartz, students still may be taking Spanish, for example, in middle school and then choosing not to continue on with that in high school. And this would provide them opportunity to take other elective courses, such as additional career and technical education classes in place of that world language class.
So, Ms. Wetstein, to that, can you share how the district could compensate for that if a student is college bound and needs those world language classes to get into college and we don't require that or are not able to provide that?
We are able to provide it, but we are struggling to find teachers. So as an example, we have relied on some online options for students when we aren't able to staff appropriately. Our counselors would still work individually with students who need those credits for college, and those classes would still be offered in our schools.
Thank you, because that would be one of my concerns, is how do we ensure that we're still putting the emphasis and ensuring that our students are prepared and have the proper credits if they desire to be in a four-year college. That if I don't want to get in a situation where a student says, well, it's not a requirement to graduate, so.
Our counselors are very careful about planning with students so that they have the courses they need for meeting the goals that they have after high school.
And it's unfortunate that here we are, where some of our neighboring school districts are able to expand and provide even more world language opportunities, and here we are trying to figure out just how to staff our departments.
And ultimately, you know, we do have students with different needs and different situations, and what we are finding is that making this a requirement for every student is not serving us well currently.
Was there a ration? I'm sure there was. What was the rationale? None of us were here for this probably when there was a policy set in place that said all students will take in high school will take at least 1 year of a world language.
I would
Was
say that.
the rationale or the intent?
The district went around to the different schools and spoke to the different building accountability committees, the PTOs, spoke to parents, and there was a lot of stakeholder input in that decision from parents, teachers, students, and even community members. It was pretty robust in looking at what our graduation requirements would be, and I remember being a part of that dialogue. And so it was community-driven or stakeholder-driven.
What was the rationale?
That most of our four-year colleges require it, and we wanted to make sure that parents wanted to make sure that their students were well prepared post-graduation,
Okay, thank you.
as I recall. That was some years ago.
Anything else on IKF? And I'll move on to the next one. Okay, GCBA-R, this is a regulation, so it does not require board approval, but we do want to let you know the direction that we are working towards with this regulation and have a time for discussion and any questions that you may have about this regulation. This is what Ms. Welch referred to earlier in staff wanting an honoring of more years upon entering our district. And so if you take a look at this policy in its current state, this one I have up for you is the revised version. There was a lot of detail that was put into the current version, and with the help of the executive team and input from the staff collaboration committee, we've really worked to streamline the information that's included within this policy. You'll notice that the current policy or regulation allows us to honor up to 9 years of service prior to entering District 38. And we are proposing, and this is still tentative, and I'll let Brett jump in if you have specific questions about cost on this, but we are working towards honoring up to 15 years if we can afford to do that. And that would include looking back at recently hired teachers and giving them back years that they were not initially awarded as they were contracted to the district.
So yeah, this is a much bigger issue than I anticipated in terms of the number of teachers that we have hired already who have had their experience truncated by this policy of 9. By the way, at 9 we're really far behind our neighboring districts who have mostly gone to 20. So that means that folks that have come here can be giving up a significant amount of experience adjustment as well. And so, so the cost item to consider making this change and going back to teachers that have been previously hired and rearranging them only for doing it going forward. There's the cost to it. We're not talking about making them whole from the time of their hire date. We're just talking about re-stepping them from where they're at currently, and that can be a significant amount of money. It could be about as much as $400,000 if we were to do it all in one fell swoop, which is not something that we can do in one fell swoop. So looking for different options to kind of phase this in over time.
And is it regardless whether they've come from in-state or out-of-state?
Yes, it's just coming from out of district.
Number of years is number of years.
Yeah.
The rest of the policy.
Hold on,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Schwartz had something. Go ahead.
It appears this is a significant competitive disadvantage for us. And if we want to encourage people entering into the profession in general, we should be participating in making it a profession that doesn't penalize you for moving. Right?
But- Yeah, and also in terms of hiring in high-quality educators who might be moving into this area
Right.
and being competitive with our neighbors, is there, in the short term, you're saying 15 years, do we have, have you projected out to consider the potential of getting us to 20 years?
Yes. The proposal that I'm putting together would start at 15 and basically add a year every year after that to get us to 20 over 5 years.
Okay.
So you essentially create a stepped-up basis,
Yes.
and then you graduate it to the goal on an annual basis.
Yes.
Where do we sign?
It's a big bill, though.
I know it is.
Yeah.
But if we can do it in bite-sized pieces,
Right.
then
It'll be part of the whole budget
Right.
presentation.
that's
I think
fantastic work.
Thank you.
That would be my question is to me, this is extremely important that we do this. And even as mentioned, 15 years is still behind our competitors who are averaging 20 now. How do we afford it? And I mean, we're gonna have to make some hard decisions, but to me, this is important for all the reasons that have already been stated. The quality of educators, the acknowledging the work and experience put in, and I'd love to be able to attract and retain teachers that are have that experience and are dedicated to the profession. And I think it's the right thing to do.
The rest of the content that is within this regulate, oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I just thought of something, and I apologize for delaying this conversation or elongating this conversation, but it goes to our competitive position in total pay. If I'm a recently hired teacher and I have 15 years experience and I came into the district 2 years ago, where would I be on the scale? I would be at 9?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so if this gets enacted,
Now you're going to go up to where you would have been had you.
17.
17,
No.
What is the
No, we
pay?
can't go that far.
okay. 15.
We will get there over time.
But here's my point. What does that do to my pay?
It will increase because you will get
Right.
some additional
And-
steps.
And so, just in general, is it likely to in the 5% range or 10% range? And specifically why I'm asking is that's another way to bridge this gap that we have.
We're bridging the gap on a case-by-case basis. We're not bridging the gap on a macro.
Right, but on a systemic basis, it's a big pill to swallow financially, but it also is another way to step out of the paradigms we've been in terms of compensation. So I applaud it in spades. And we're continually bridging this gap. And my point to the team here is if we take a look at total compound aggregate compensation from 2019 to 2023-24 year, and we're able to enact what Mr. Ridgway showed previously and something like this, I think it'd be pretty impressive to see the net percentage increase. Because it migrates in the 15 to 20% range. Right? So if you were making $100 a day, you move to $115 to $120 a day. And that's starting to move a needle now, right? Sorry to interrupt, Amber.
No, I appreciate the questions. When you look at the current policy compared to the one that we have here in front of you, The major change is trying to consolidate information and also provide us with more flexibility so that as we're able to continue to honor time and professional learning credits, we can make those adjustments as we're financially able. So you'll notice that we carried over the fact that teachers would receive a one-time bonus upon completion of a master's degree program, but we did not clarify as specifically as the current iteration does in the specific amount. That way we can make adjustments as we're able to moving forward. And then we have outlined how teachers can earn credit towards salary increments, either through college and university credit, outlined how second career teachers may earn credit towards licensure and salary, and then specified when teachers are taking professional development off contract time, they can also be compensated or earn credit towards those salary increments. And this is something that is currently in our practice, but we are trying to streamline this regulation so that it's more easily accessible for our teachers. Questions that you have about this proposal?
I have a question, and I apologize if it's not quite in relation to this. When we see legislation come that's designed to help certify and license our educators, make it easier for them to get there, do we see a benefit in our district with those programs? And how does that play? Does it play into any of this?
I would say we definitely have a benefit when we are in a situation where we are not able to find teachers to fill positions that are posted, and that we want to consider all of those types of options. The way it would play into this is that when teachers are taking professional development, whether that be through a university program, sometimes through a BOCES, then this policy outlines how we would compensate them accordingly.
Can I just ask a clarification question on item C, college university credit? I think it's up above there. So as a person moves through a graduate program, as they earn additional credit, they will be earning more even though prior to them actually receiving a graduate degree?
That's correct. The pay schedule outlines lanes, am I right on that, Brett? Lanes that teachers can progress across dependent on how many credits they've earned.
Yes.
That's great. That's actually in direct feedback to some things that were brought forward in last year's Engage and Elevate, where there was, they were looking for additional support for graduate training. I think this qualifies as that. So.
Is that consistent with other districts?
It is.
So it's no longer when you get the degree, it's when you're actually progressing in the graduate program?
It's both, yes, and that is consistent with other districts.
Perfect, thank you.
I'd just like to add a procedural note around this specific policy/regulation. As you'll know, there's a -R to this one. So our intent, in order to provide clarity to our staff in terms of this being incorporated into our budget planning and ultimate approval, or your ultimate approval as we go into May and June, would be to present this formally as a first reading at the April meeting with sort of an unusual approval note, because as you recall, typically regulations do not necessarily require formal action from the board. However, we're asking for it in this particular case to make a commitment and to demonstrate the board's support for a regulation that we're proposing, and the sooner that we're able to do that, the better. So in this particular example, we wouldn't necessarily envision a first and a second read around a regulation that technically doesn't require your approval, if that makes sense. We just like to put it out there formally and have this on the books after the April 17th meeting. Does that make sense?
So we'll be voting in May.
Nope. This one you will be looking at as a first read in April. And because it's a regulation, it does not technically require a second read. And for the reason that I just mentioned, in order to give our staff clarity and understanding about where they can position themselves as pay schedules are also being approved at the April meeting, it's just a nice way to have it all packaged up for our staff in one meeting and not go through necessarily a second reading process on a regulation that you're not typically approving anyway. So I said that a couple ways, but the same thing twice. You do not need a second reading on this regulation. You really technically don't even need a first reading. We just need to present it to you, but we're asking for your official approval in that regard.
I think especially, yeah, because it does have such a financial impact. It'll be part of the overall budget, package that we'll be approving. So it has that tie to it. So
If it's something that we're going to vote on, and I understand exactly what you're saying, Casey, but it's public perception. So I have no problems voting on it, but I would like that to be published on the website as quickly as possible and to get our stakeholders' feedback.
Yes, and we're happy to do that. And I will just echo that this has been feedback that we've been hearing from our staff for a long time. So primarily because of the staff impact that it has, that's why we're positioning it the way that we are. And I just wanted to call that out here so that going into that April meeting, you have that advance awareness and know exactly what we're putting in front of you.
I also think it could ultimately help us retain some teachers who are on the verge of leaving. I heard from one teacher after the last staff collaboration committee meeting that came up and said, "Thank you for doing this. I was really thinking I would have to leave to pay my bills next year, but if I can get additional time served that I wasn't originally given, I think I might be able to stay." So I do think it would behoove us to do this in a timely manner so that we can keep some of those staff that we may lose.
That's exactly the case. And I think if you look then at your April, I'm doing a little bit of a preview of your last item here for the work session. If you look at that April list, we'll be asking you to consider again the pay schedules as they've been proposed. So that will be an official vote. This item will be a vote, and that will help set the stage for budget proposal, official draft proposal, May 15th, with the final approval still to occur in June. So it's consistent with those decision points that we mapped out just a few months ago. We're on that path, and we're sticking to that.
The graduation requirement will still do a second reading.
Correct. So that will require additional input, feedback, et cetera. That will only be a first reading in April with a second reading and possible approval in May.
And we would anticipate that change going into effect for next school year if the board approves that change.
So starting with which graduating class?
The 2024 graduating class.
Technically, it'd be the 2027 graduating class.
If
It's the 23-24 school year, which is the 2027 graduating class, just to be clear.
So sophomore, sorry.
It'd be incoming it would be incoming freshmen.
So sophomores, juniors, and seniors would still fall under the.
That's actually a good question now that you brought that up.
That was a question I was.
That's
I
a
think
really
we
good
need to
question.
bring that back to our team because I do believe there's some different opinions on that potentially, or some different understandings.
If we could get clarification before that April meeting, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. There's a couple ways to look at that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So item C4, previewing the April 17 board meeting agenda. We've already touched on aspects of that, but are there any other questions, concerns? Casey?
Yeah, if I could just speak again, and I appreciate that that meeting will kind of be two parts, if you will, in regards to once the official appointment of your newest board member becomes finalized with that person being sworn in and then an affidavit signing and then finally the board organization. That will be the first set of actions that the board will take, and then we'll roll into the actual meeting. So whoever will be in that president role at that point will be running the meeting. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. We do have a recognition planned. We're going to showcase and spotlight the Stars of Tomorrow recipients, and we're going to highlight our partnership with Qantas and make that a nice celebration. And then you'll have the opportunity, of course, for public comment, board member comment, superintendent update. One of the things that I just wanted to definitely call out in advance of the meeting is and we're going to talk some more about this in terms of our regular cadence for strategic plan priority updates. But we see and recognize the value for an update specific to Priority 1, safe, healthy, and welcoming schools. Mr. Frampton and Mr. Coates will be co-presenting on that priority update. What I would like to request in advance from you all is questions that you may have specific to that priority update. If you could get those, you can either give them direct to me or to Vicki, or even you can go direct to Rick if you'd like. But we'd like to field questions in advance to make sure that we are as prepared as we possibly can be. And if we can target that by, let's say, middle of next week, give it a week from today, or maybe by Wednesday next week, I think that will give us ample time to make sure that we have all of those specifics incorporated into our presentation. So I just appreciate the ability to do that in advance. Ma'am?
May I share a feedback now?
Of course.
So I appreciate and applaud the parent sessions that we've had throughout the school year. Ms. Phillips and I were at the one last night, and that's just one of a series that we've been doing throughout the school year. So I would encourage or appreciate pointing that out, like highlighting what those sessions. We've had 3 of them. I know we've had to combine 2 of them because of the weather, but we've had 3 throughout the school year. So
That's correct.
in that series and what we're doing in engaging with our parents for the safety and wellness of our students, I think is something that we should be proud that we're doing.
It's a great plug. Thank you.
I have one thought since you brought up the whole idea of pre-staging questions.
Please.
Sometimes with our schedules, it's hard to do, but to the extent we can do it, I believe we can make our meetings significantly shorter and more efficient. So if we get a shot to do it, let's do it.
Yeah, and I don't mean to only focus on that particular part of the presentation. As you will also expect, we'll have the official pay schedule approval. Mr. Ridgway will take us through our financial planning and analysis section. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. There is a health benefit presentation that's included. Are we ready to talk about fees?
No, you're right. No, it was May.
Fees are in May. And, I think you still have my evaluation to approve.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it's also on the agenda.
That small little item.
Is there
I
anything
think
else?
that was it
So
from
I
us, at
think
least.
we will call this meeting adjourned. And we will see everybody on Zoom Friday, April 7th, 7 a.m., which I appreciate everybody's support on that. I know that's an early hour, so thank you. And can anticipate probably no more than 15, 20 minutes at the tops.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Drive safe.